Welcome to the deep dive. Ready to dive into something pretty wild. It's called the Aquatic Ape Theory.
Ooh, okay, I like where this is going.
So it's this idea that, well, the whole savannah thing
Yeah.
about our ancestors.
Yeah, the classic story.
Okay, well, this theory says, what if they hung out in the water a lot too? Like a lot-y.
Interesting. So instead of just trees and grasslands, maybe some oceans and lakes in the mix.
Exactly. And get this, we've got scientific papers, books, even some, let's say, passionate opinions from an Aquatic Ape Theory website.
Okay, so we're covering all the bases. Real deep dive then.
Definitely. We'll see if this whole aquatic thing holds water, so to speak.
You see what you did there.
So the Savannah Theory has been the main story for ages. Humans went from trees to grasslands, start walking upright, lost their fur, the drill.
Good textbook stuff.
Exactly. But some scientists are saying, hang on, does it all really add up?
So there are holes in the story.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, drumroll please, the Aquatic Ape Theory.
Lay it on me.
Back in 1960, this marine biologist named Alistair Hardy, he's looking at humans, looking at aquatic mammals, and goes, there's some similarities here.
I guess you wonder.
Right. So he proposes that maybe, just maybe, our ancestors had this aquatic phase. They spent serious time in the water.
Bold move for 1960. What did the scientific world think?
Oh, they weren't exactly on board. It was pretty radical, challenged everything they thought they knew.
Happens all the time. New ideas can rock the boat.
Definitely. But the story doesn't end there. Fast forward to 1972, Elaine Morgan, a writer, stumbles across Hardy's work.
Okay.
And she is hooked, like obsessed, dives deep into all the research and writes a book called The Descent of Woman. Becomes a bestseller.
So she brings the aquatic ape theory to the masses. Interesting.
Yeah. Though some scientists weren't thrilled, she wasn't, one of them.
Ah, the classic science versus the public debate.
But honestly, the more I look into this, some of these out there ideas start to make sense.
Yeah.
Like, why are we the only apes walking around on two legs all the time?
Yeah, good point. Bipedalism, not exactly common in the animal world.
And not the best way to get around on land. But think about being in the water.
Ah, you stand up to keep your head above water.
Exactly. Even chimps, our closest relatives, they do it when they're wading.
It's like an instinct.
Right. And then there's the whole no fur thing. We're the only naked apes out there.
True. The savannah theory says it's for keeping cool, but plenty of animals on the savannah have fur.
So Elaine Morgan, she points out how our fat is distributed. It's more like, seals and whales, that blubbery layer.
For insulation in the water.
Yeah. And think about babies. They're born with so much more fat than other primate babies.
Almost like they're prepped for water.
Right. Okay, and another thing, breath holding. I mean, we're on dolphins, but compared to other land mammals, we're pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty unique.
So the theory says maybe that comes from a time when we needed to dive to survive. There's even research that experienced divers, their heart rate slows down more underwater.
Yep.
Like, we're kind of hardwired for it. And get this, the aquatic ape folks say our ancestors didn't just hunt on land. They were hitting up the seafood buffet big time.
Okay, I'm listening.
Archaeologists have found engraved shells, almost 500,000 years old.
Yeah.
So they were living by the sea, eating shellfish. Makes sense. You're there, it's food.
Makes sense to me. And shellfish, that's good brain food too.
Exactly. So we've got walking upright for wading, fat for insulation, holding our breath for diving, and brain-boosting seafood. It's starting to come together, isn't it?
I'm seeing the picture.
Now hold on to your swim caps, because there's this idea called the aquarboreal hypothesis.
Aquarboreal.
It means our ancestors might have been comfortable in both trees and deep water. Like, picture them swinging through the trees, then diving into the water.
Multi-talented ancestor.
Right. This anthropologist, Richard Wrangham, he says these shallow water areas, they were like a backup food source. Things were tough on land.
Makes sense. You got to go where the food is.
And there are actually footprints, millions of years old, found by a lake in Kenya. So they were definitely hanging out by the water.
Evidence.
I know. It's like we're piecing together a whole new story of how we got here. But, of course, not everyone's convinced.
Right, they're always skeptics. What do they say?
Well, for one, they're like, show me the fossils. They want clear proof of these aquatic ancestors.
Fair enough.
And they point out that, like, bipedalism, hairlessness, those things didn't all happen at once.
So a more gradual process.
Right. And some say, well, other primates have traits like less hair, too. So maybe we don't need the whole aquatic thing to explain it.
Okay, so how do the aquatic ape people respond to that?
Well, they say the fossil record isn't perfect, especially near coasts. Things don't fossilize as easily there.
That's true.
And they're not saying we were like full-on mermaids. It's more that we spent way more time around water than other apes.
Yeah.
So changes happen gradually.
Okay, a more nuanced approach.
Exactly. This whole thing is so thought-provoking. It really makes you think about our connection to nature in a different way.
Yeah.
But you know what I find really interesting? Our sinuses.
Sinuses.
Yeah. Apparently, they might have something to do with our aquatic past.
Now that you mention it, fully aquatic mammals don't have sinuses. Dolphins, whales, none.
Right. But we've got these air pockets in our skulls. What's the deal with that?
Good question. Some scientists say even though sinuses aren't ideal for being fully aquatic, they might have helped if we were living more along the shore.
So like in and out of the water a lot.
Yeah, they might have even helped with buoyancy, like little flotation devices.
Whoa, really?
And maybe they protected our airways when we were submerged, stopped water from getting into our lungs.
Okay, now my mind is blown. It's like our bodies have these hidden stories
Hmm.
waiting to be uncovered.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning of what the aquatic ape theory has to offer. We haven't even touched on the impact of seafood on our brains, or the latest research on how our skin might absorb water.
There's so much more to explore. We'll be back in a moment to dive even deeper into this fascinating theory. So don't go anywhere.
We're back! Still diving deep into the aquatic ape theory.
You know, before the break, we were talking about those sinuses and how they might connect to our aquatic past. It's crazy to think something so, normal can tell us about evolution.
I know, right? It just shows how much we still have to learn about ourselves and our connection to the natural world.
Totally. And we were talking about how this theory is getting more attention now with new research. Like you mentioned transdermal reverse osmosis, our skin maybe absorbing water. That sounds like something out of a movie.
It does sound pretty sci-fi. But there's some evidence for it still being looked at, of course. Imagine our ancestors just chilling in shallow water, soaking it all up.
That would have been huge, especially if fresh water was hard to find. It'd be like a built-in water bottle.
Right. Big advantage over animals who could only drink water.
So are scientists studying this?
Right.
Like, how do you even test if our skin can do that?
There are studies happening right now looking into it. They're comparing our skin to marine mammals, the ones that we know absorb water through their skin. Complicated stuff, but the early results are pretty exciting.
It's mind-blowing to think we're still discovering new things about our bodies. What other research is shedding light on this aquatic ape theory?
Well, a lot of focus is on these waterside areas and how important they were for human evolution. Scientists are realizing that these spots, with tons of food and safety from predators, could have been way more crucial than we thought.
So it's not just being in the water, but near it too.
Yeah, it's about seeing how special these places were and how they might have pushed those adaptations in our ancestors.
That makes sense. Coastlines, rivers, it'd be like a prehistoric grocery store. Shellfish, fish, plants, all right there.
Exactly, and way safer than being out in the open savanna, right? Water keeps some predators away, plus you've got all that vegetation for cover.
Like they found the perfect spot to live and evolve. Makes you wonder what else those areas have to tell us.
Absolutely, and this new focus on those waterside spots has opened up some really cool research areas, like underwater archaeology is getting big. It could show us evidence of settlements and stuff that have been underwater for, forever.
Whoa, hold on. Like finding lost underwater villages. Tools our ancestors used. That'd be straight out of an adventure movie.
I know, right? Who knows what's down there waiting to be found?
Okay, we've covered a ton in this deep dive. The aquatic ape theory's history, the evidence for and against it, new research. But for our listeners, why should they care about this? What's the big deal?
Good question. Even if this theory isn't totally spot on, it makes us think about ourselves and nature differently, challenges the classic story, and makes us open to other possibilities.
It's a reminder that we're still figuring out our own story.
Right.
There's so much more to learn.
Absolutely. And think about it. The idea that water, the thing that covers most of our planet and that we need to survive, might have shaped us into who we are. That's fascinating.
It really makes you wonder, if this theory's got some truth to it, how does that change how we see ourselves? Our connection to water. Maybe we're drawn to the ocean, to lakes, not just because they're pretty, but because they're, part of us somehow.
No, that's something to think about. I'd say to everyone listening, keep that question in mind. Look into it more, be open to new ideas. Maybe you'll be the one to find the next big clue.
You never know. Maybe one of our listeners will make the next big discovery. Find that missing fossil or explore some hidden underwater ruins.
I love it. We need more people like you out there questioning things and pushing the limits of what we know.
And speaking of pushing limits, We're going to take a quick break and come back with the final part of our deep dive into the aquatic ape theory. Stick around. We've got even more fascinating stuff to talk about and some big questions to explore. And hey, if you're loving this journey into our watery past, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the deep dive for more mind-blowing explorations. Back again for the final part of our aquatic ape deep dive.
It's been amazing thinking about our connection to water like this.
It really has. But what about us being hairless? Why would we lose all that fur on a hot savanna?
That's another thing the AAT might explain. If our ancestors were in the water a lot, losing fur would make them better swimmers.
Yeah, less drag.
And we also have all this fat under our skin, subcutaneous fat, kind of like marine mammals.
So we're hairless, we've got the fat, we're walking upright. Is there anything else?
Oh, there's more. We could talk about our voice box next. The larynx,
Mhm.
humans have it really low compared to other apes. It lets us make all these sounds for speech,
Right.
but on land, it makes us more likely to choke.
So our ability to talk
Mm-hmm.
could be because of our time in the water. How does that work?
Oh, a lower larynx gives you more control over your breathing, which is important for diving.
I see.
Imagine our ancestors holding their breath, swimming around looking for food. That breath control could have led to speech.
Wow. That's incredible. This whole time I pictured them on the savannah, grunting at each other. Maybe they were singing underwater. All right, I'm hooked. Tell me more. What else is there?
Let's talk about tears. We don't usually think of crying as an aquatic thing, but human tears, they're different. They have special proteins that protect our eyes from not having enough oxygen.
Oh, so like built-in goggles.
Exactly. If our ancestors were underwater a lot, these tears would have been a big help. They could see clearly, even when holding their breath.
That's amazing. It's like our bodies are full of clues, and the AET helps us figure them out.
Right. And speaking of clues, what about our noses?
Okay.
We usually think they're for dry climates, to save water, right? But what
Yeah.
if they were for something else?
Okay, I'm curious. What else could a nose be for?
Well, some AAT people think they might help us in water.
In water. How could a nose help you swim?
Think about chimps. They use their noses to balance when they're wading in water.
Hmm,
It sounds weird, I know, but when you think about how water works, it kind of makes sense.
I never thought of it that way.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got bipedalism, no hair, the fat, the larynx, the tears, the noses. I see a pattern here.
There's also evidence from Neanderthals. They found cave paintings of seals.
Neanderthals were painting seals.
It seems like they were really into marine life. And then there's this amazing discovery in the Sicilian Channel. They found a submerged monolith underwater from the Mesolithic period. It shows humans were active on the coast back then.
So we have all these hints. Ancient humans living by the sea. But if they were so dependent on water, how did they spread across the world? Did they swim everywhere?
Not exactly. That's where the coastal dispersal model comes in.
What's that?
It says that our ancestors followed the coastlines.
So like a prehistoric beach road trip?
Pretty much. They used the resources from the ocean, and then they followed rivers inland. That's how they spread to new places.
That makes way more sense than them crossing all those deserts and stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We've considered so much. But there's one thing I'm really curious about. Menopause. How does the AT explain that?
It might seem strange, but there's a connection between humans and killer whales.
Killer whales.
Yeah, they both go through menopause.
Wait, killer whales have menopause.
They do, and they're the only other species we know of, besides us.
Wow, I had no idea. Okay, but what does that have to do with water?
Well, there's this theory. Menopause might have evolved to help raise kids in a tough aquatic environment.
I don't see the connection.
Imagine early humans living on the coast, diving for food. Mothers need to be strong to do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be easy to dive while pregnant or nursing.
Right. So the idea is menopause lets grandmothers help with childcare. Their daughters can keep diving and feeding everyone.
So menopause helps the next generation survive in this coastal environment.
That's the idea.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. This aquatic ape theory is making me rethink everything I thought I knew. But I have to ask, if this theory is so interesting, why don't more scientists believe it?
That's a great question, and we'll talk about those criticisms next. But first, we want to hear from you. What do you think so far? Are you as fascinated by the AAT as we are? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into amazing topics.
So where does this all leave us? Is the aquatic ape theory totally wrong? Or is there something to it?
Well, I think that's up to each person to decide.
Yeah, true.
The AAT is definitely outside of mainstream science, but it's a really cool idea. It makes you think differently about where we came from.
I know. It's definitely made me look at our relationship with water in a new way. We love being in and around water. We need it to live. And our bodies even have some things in common with sea creatures.
It really does make you wonder. There's still so much we don't know about our evolution. Maybe someday we'll find out even more about how water shaped us.
Well, we've given everyone a lot to think about today. What are your thoughts? What parts of the aquatic ape theory stood out to you? Let us know in the comments.
And don't forget to check out the show notes. We've got links to all the sources we talked about.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode with your friends. Until next time, keep those brains swimming.